is actually our first meeting of this council term, and we have one item on our agenda. It's the Fayetteville Streetscape Plan.
Good afternoon, Chairman Melton, members of the committee. So as you'll recall, council requested this committee to assign some priority to some of the early and low-cost interventions for the Fayetteville streetscape and the reimagining of that. And so staff has put together a presentation to help the committee accomplish that task. And so I will turn the floor over to Mr. Ken Bowers with the Urban Projects Group to take us through the presentation.
Thank you. Ken Bowers, Planning and Development. We're going to give a brief recap of some of the material we presented at the full council meeting, but we have some additional information, which is we've done some preliminary cost estimating of what implementation would look like in response to the council's desire to try to move something along on Fayetteville Street in the nearer term. So start with the summary of what was the major points of the design, the future design for Fayetteville Street, and then talk about a phase one midterm moderate cost option, and then what the phase two long-term much higher cost would be, and then recap a little bit some of the investments we made in the plaza, which seem to be bearing fruit down there. So the existing streetscape design, to sum it up, and this goes back to the original opening of Fayetteville Street in 2006, is that we have a very wide, wider than normal sort of step-off zone that's not for pedestrian circulation and it's not for outdoor seating, that sits between the curb and the planting beds. And that's 5 feet. And then there's this 12-foot furniture zone, and that's where the planting beds and the tree pits and the benches and the pots and other things of that nature are. There's 8.5 feet of clear pedestrian zone, and then there's an option for businesses to put tables within a 4-foot zone against the building face, which is only enough for about a 2-top table. And in certain locations, you can get a permit to put additional outdoor seating within that furniture zone. But one of the complicating factors is, depending on where your storefront is located, some of the existing permanent installations in there take up a significant amount of room in the furniture zone, leaving less space left over for outdoor dining on Fayetteville Street. So one of the findings of the economic strategy that was done, managed by the DRA and done in partnership with the city, was that the street wasn't reaching its full potential because there was just too much stuff in the way of creating more outdoor dining space. So what our current design consultants have come up with is a major concept, and this was very responsive to what we heard from business owners, from landlords and others, is they wanted to have more serving space directly at the building face. So it's enlarging that from 4 feet to 8 feet. In order to do that, the walking zone now has to spill into the furniture zone because we want to maintain an 8-foot pathway, because Fayetteville Street is our main street. It has many of the city's tallest buildings on it, and it's a street that's designed to accommodate comfortably significant pedestrian flow. So we don't want to go beyond 8 feet for that walking zone. That leaves 11 feet for the furniture zone, and the concept there is to clear much of the existing permanent installations out of there and replace it with more versatile ways of activating the space, which could be outdoor dining for a restaurant, in addition to the 8-foot spill-out area. It could be just movable seating or outdoor seating. It could be swings. Some of this could be privately initiated. Some of it could be publicly initiated. And then the buffer zone, the step-out zone for cars, would just be 2.5 feet, which is sufficient room to open a car door and to step out on the curb for passengers of automobiles that are parking next to the curb on Fayetteville Street. In order to better delineate the space between different activation zones, and also in order to delineate some of the or to replace some of the green space and planting that is being lost by the removal of some of the permanent installations, the idea here is to take the tree pits and enlarge them out to the edge of that buffer zone, creating an at-grade planting area. In order to protect that planting area, probably some sort of low fencing would be necessary just to discourage people from stepping in. One of the issues with the current planting areas is that they tend to get trampled, particularly during special events where there's high pedestrian flows, or especially parades when people are crowding the sidewalk to get the best view. And often the best view is standing within those planting areas. So this is the rendering that we showed at the meeting. Kind of this is the existing condition, and you can see all the things that we're talking about. Let me see if I can kind of highlight here. You've got your benches that are kind of perpendicular to the flows. You've got these potted areas. You've got these at-grade areas. You've got the tree pits. So all of this stuff is taking up a lot of space. And you can see in the case of here on the 200 block that there is a significant, that even though there is an outdoor seating area that's been delineated here, the ability to put outdoor seating there is limited by all this other stuff that's within that zone. So a lot of what the redesign is intended to do is to declutter Fayetteville Street and provide more space for outdoor dining. So this shows in the long-term condition what that could look like if we were to implement the full design idea. So you see the planting areas and the enlarged tree pits. You see these different seating zones that are now in the furniture zones. And then you see an expanded outdoor dining area up against the building face. This also shows a changing to the paving treatment. The current paving treatment delineates these zones. Of course, completely removing and replacing all the pavers on Fayetteville Street is a very expensive process. We'd probably want to look at whether it was pavers, concrete, a mix of those two to make it more cost-effective and better for long-term maintenance. But it would be desirable if we could physically delineate through color and materiality the different zones. So as we presented in the Phase 1 implementation strategy, in the midterm would be simply to, as a regulatory matter, change the zones without changing the pavers. You would create a new outdoor dining zone 8 feet in depth against the building face and allow businesses to relocate their seating into that, and then you would maintain a walking zone. Now, as you see from this photo, there's stuff in the way of the walking zone. There's benches that are perpendicular to the path of travel, and there are also less of it. You can't see them so well here, but there are these stone seat walls, which are solid blocks of granite, which are also intruded into that area. So we would need to remove those. There's 37 of the granite seat walls. That's a significant chunk of the total cost because of their weight, and the need to backfill the space they're occupying with pavers out of our, both out of our storehouse of pavers, as well as probably the need to purchase some additional new pavers that are as good a match as can be found, since the specific pavers that were used here are no longer available in the marketplace. So we estimate the total cost of this across all the blocks from Morgan Street down to City Plaza would be about $1.1 million. Now, there's one other thing that was a high priority, which was to do something about the news racks, and so we have done some preliminary costing of adding that to the project. That would be about another $300,000 to cut down the news racks to size and remove the existing shelters. So that would bring the total Phase 1 cost to $1.4 million. So that is a not insignificant amount of money, but for a refresh of 5 blocks of Fayetteville Street, not huge either. If there was a desire to pilot this on a block or two, obviously those costs could be brought down commensurate with the amount of Fayetteville Street that would be altered. And then the Phase 2 implementation, we haven't fully costed this out yet, but it would obviously be a multi-million-dollar project to change the paving and materials, remove all of that, all of those fixed installations, the seat walls, the pots, the podiums, the planting areas, reconfigure the tree pits. It should be noted that that almost, probably most, if not, most of those existing fixtures have utilities in them. There's water and electricity, so that would have to be either relocated or capped or made flush with the street in order to remove those fixed elements. So you have the paving changes, new paving in the intersections, mid-block crossing, tree pit enhancements, removing the planter walls, new activation elements. It's a long menu of things that you could do, and how many things you decide to choose off of that menu would obviously impact the long-term cost of that. And then the last slide I had is just to, again, highlight some of the things that we have done lately to help with the activation of City Plaza. We've created these new planters to help delineate the seating areas. There are umbrellas up that have been working very well and attracting more outdoor dining because they provide sun protection. All this stuff has been able to accommodate special events. So if anyone was out on Sunday, very packed crowd for a Fiesta del Pueblo, these planters were able to be moved out of the way in order to accommodate those large crowds down on the plaza. So these furnishings seem to be working well and have made a positive impact. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
We'll open up to questions. I had a couple, and looks like Mayor first, and then Councilmember Harrison.
Yeah, I'm just going back to, again, I think all the phase one stuff, like just removing and the 1.4 is very helpful. And when you go to the phase two, things like reconfiguring the tree pits, I just wonder why does that go into a phase two versus a phase one, given that you're going to have to be doing paver work, and maybe you could use some of the pavers from that to fill in the pavers that are, from removing the granite. So anyway, that's one question. And then I also would love to know about we have the two alleys going back between Wilmington. That is pretty unsightly. So do we have any cost out or sort of action step in a phase one for that? And then the third point being the bandstand and sort of a pricing around that for City Plaza.
Okay, so I'll take those in kind of reverse order. We have not priced out a bandstand as of yet, but I think that's something that we could easily bring back to you at a subsequent meeting. On the Market and Exchange Plaza, we do want to highlight that the city, not that long ago, within the last 10 years, completely rehabilitated those. So in terms of a major piece of infrastructure investment, we think that the current paving surface planning areas is fine. We did do some investigations, which we have not had a chance to cost out, about removing some of the things, such as some of the structures that are in Market Plaza, which we think could be low-cost interventions. We could fill in some of the existing areas that were originally for planting, which quite frankly, because of the traffic, are just dirt right now and are not really adding to Market Plaza and have proven to be a maintenance issue. We could fill those in with hardscape and make those more durable. I would like to stress that a big problem with those plazas is a lot less the physical condition of the plaza itself and the lack of any activating uses facing it. So, on Market Plaza, on one side, you've got the back end of buildings up front on Martin Street. And so it's service entries, it's ventilation, from the kitchens comes out there, back doors come out there. It's a blank wall along the bank. And then you've got 227 Glenwood, beautiful building, wonderful uses. The Pointer Y is there, which is a wonderful thing to have downtown. The one retail use we had there closed up shop in December, and so that's been kind of dead. And then, of course, there's our building, which at one point in time did have some dining in it. It had a Submarine shop and it had a restaurant. And with the pending move, we're not reinvesting in the ground floor of our building, and so eventually that will be sold on the private market and someone will take that over. But until there's some active use and probably some food and beverage on those plazas, I think it's going to be hard to activate them. But we are open to maybe some short-term strategies, whether that's some vending or retail kiosks or something that could do that. I think that really needs an activation strategy. It is outside the scope of this particular study to look at the two plazas, but they definitely, you're absolutely right that they need activation, they need something. But we think that is more along the lines of programming as opposed to major capital investments. And then the first question you asked was regarding, could we expand the tree pits in phase one and reuse the pavers? And I think the issue there is that that kind of goes in concert with the removal of the existing at-grade planting beds and the podiums and pots and seat walls. So if we expand the tree pits while not removing those things, we've actually taken up even more space that would otherwise be available for outdoor dining in the short term. So I think that's why we bundled that into phase two. Now, there's obviously these changes. What is considered phase one is certainly not set in stone, and staff has looked at other options for how to free up some additional space. One of which might be that we leave the vertical elements in place, but we take the at-grade planter beds out. Maybe that could be done in conjunction with the tree pits, for example. But there's lots of different ways that we could mix and match between all the different design elements here to create a feasible option. I think what staff needs to know is how much we want to try to bite off with existing resources, and then what is the appetite for a future capital investment in Fayetteville Street and how that would be best be phased. Because some of the stuff we're talking about is medium cost and some of it's high cost.
Yep. And I guess just quick follow-up to that is understand the tree pit part. That's helpful.
Yeah.
I think overall, you think about the amount of work and economic plans we've done and design plans, and I just want to make sure that we're making some commensurate effort to all the effort that has been put into this.
Right.
And while I think we want to be economical and judicious, I don't want to be so cheap that we kind of just, throw away all this work. So I do think, bandstand, that would be helpful to get that in. And then by the pointer, going over to the Wilmington Street,
Yes.
I agree overall activation is the ideal, but given what you've just described, I doubt that's going to be a short term. And I do think the physical look of that space
Right.
is pretty unattractive. So even if there's shorter term paint and light kinds of ways to pretty it up, I do think that should be considered. I mean, I'll defer to my colleagues here too, but potentially considered in a phase 1.
Okay.
Councilmember Harrison.
Just a few questions, Ken. Can you tell me, or do you know how many restaurants or bars can benefit from this outdoor dining change on Fayetteville Street? How many are there? Because I know some businesses don't necessarily have that activation potential.
So we believe about 8
8.
right now.
So for all the other businesses that won't have outdoor dining, is the idea that it's just an empty space? And I'm curious, are the businesses that are going to have that outdoor dining, are they managing the furniture? They have to put it out there. And so if the other businesses don't have such furniture, again, it's just empty space?
Yeah. So any outdoor seating area, the actual furniture is the property of the business and is managed by that business.
Okay.
So what they do with it at night, whether they bring it indoors, whether they, put a cable lock around it, we've seen folks do different approaches. Some of them leave their stuff out. Some of them, like Foundation puts it kind of in the alcove. So it's theirs to manage. If you have a storefront that doesn't have a food and beverage and doesn't want to put outdoor seating out there, yes, it would be empty space or simply sidewalk. It would be circulation space.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I have some concern that our design doesn't think about all those other uses on the street. Also curious for the furniture, I saw like the orange furniture that would be like publicly maintained. Yes, those
Like
benches.
in this picture.
Is that only for phase 2? It's not planned for phase 1?
So that's occupying space that's currently occupied by the planting beds and pots and seawalls. So
those are going to
removal of those-
remain in your current version of phase 1. You were only removing those benches that were kind of
that's
half
right.
in the way.
What we were trying to do was remove what was necessary in order to move the pedestrian space over.
Yeah, I guess I have some concerns about loss of public benches, and then in phase 1, if we stick
Right.
with the plan, we wouldn't add any public seating unless I'm missing something.
Yeah, so the total amount of public seating as currently scoped in phase 1 would be lower than it is today. It would not be entirely removed because you would still have some of the seat walls that are, parallel to the direction of travel. And the thought is, in terms of some of the benches, the metal benches, was that these would be relocated by turning them 90 degrees to fit up against the existing planters.
Okay,
In
so
order
they
to
would
preserve
still
some
be
outdoor
used.
seating, but that outdoor seating would now be facing the sidewalk instead of being perpendicular to the direction of travel.
So can you run me the number of benches that would be shifted then?
So I remember we had in the number of granite seat walls, which is 37. Did we 44 benches.
And they would be shifted, not removed, all of
Some
them?
would be removed and some would be shifted, I believe, because I don't know if we have room to shift all of them.
Sounds like you have 44 benches and 37 walls, so maybe 7 of them are not getting shifted and the rest are? Something similar to
I
that?
think we'd have to double check that number.
But you're saying you're going to take these benches that are perpendicular, turn them so they're pushed up against those
Yeah.
planter things right now. So instead of running perpendicular, they're going to
That's
run
right. So-
parallel.
Some number.
You got a
of
bench
them.
right here, it would
Yeah.
kind of essentially
Potentially
be put right
37 or
there.
44.
And,
It's got- I
and
think
you would
it's
be
wherever the
facing this
planters
way
are,
when
they're
you
gonna
sat
turn.
on it.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I just want to have some clarity on that, how much public seating are we losing?
Right.
And again, for those empty areas, which is most of Fayetteville, where we don't have outdoor dining possibilities, I'm just thinking about, is that what we want? You know, is there any other opportunities to provide something in that space?
Mayor Pro Tem, do you have anything?
Oh, yes. For the end of the conversation.
Okay. I've got a couple things. One part of this discussion, also I want to acknowledge that Councilmember Jones and Silver are here, and then we are going to, no, I was just letting everyone know that you're participating. And then we will open it up for members of the public. I know folks from DRA are here too and some business owners. But I spent a lot of time on Fayetteville Street, practiced law at the courthouse down there. I think and I remember from the initial study that there was sort of this idea of doing different zones. And so I'm wondering as we implement this, if maybe it makes more sense to maximize sort of the blocks where we're going to get the highest impact first. And I think about that block right in front of the former Wells Fargo building where they did a significant amount of work to activate those storefronts. This is actually the picture you just keep showing us, basically.
Okay.
I'm wondering if we should focus maybe on doing more improvements, maybe all of them at first there where the high concentration of bars and restaurants are, plus looking at how we can upfit the Market and Exchange breezeway plazas. I remember the initial report talked about these kiosk opportunities. Is there a way that we could do something like that? I love the idea of also paint and lighting. And then obviously in City Plaza, the sort of bandstand stage area instead of a water feature. And so I'm wondering if there's a way to sort of maximize the improvements in that way, and doing this at first in front of the locations that are really going to benefit from the outdoor dining, and then see what we learn from that. So that would be maybe one idea for how to move forward. And maybe on this one block, maybe we do phases 1 and 2 all at once. I mean, I don't know if that's a possibility, but something where we just maximize the impact of it. Because it would seem like and we also want to think about the future, right? Because just because there's only 8 bars and restaurants that benefit from this now, the goal is to make it a much livelier street. I mean, I was in Minneapolis a few summers ago, even in Charlotte. They have a few corridors where it is just outdoor dining. Everyone's there. The energy's there. I was in Columbus, their main street over the summer. That's exactly what they have. I think I actually sent a picture to Mr. King and said, this is what we should be doing on Fayetteville Street. And so it's almost like if you build it, they will come. So just because it's only 8 bars and restaurants now, like if we make the investment, I think the whole corridor could be that way. But then I think about like the courthouse, the post office. When you get closer to City Plaza, like the new Sir Walter Raleigh location, they have like almost like a little alleyway. Like they're not going to, I think, benefit as much or need this, but there are, I think, several blocks that will. So I guess that's just my thought. If we could be a little maybe more prescriptive as like a pilot, sort of speak.
Okay. I think that's certainly an option. We mentioned that one way of bringing the phase 1 cost down would be not do all 5 blocks, but to concentrate on 2. And I think you're correct. The 100 and 200 block have the highest concentrations of both existing food and beverage tenants, and I think also storefronts that, should the market be there, could be adapted for such.
Right. Some that are empty now that could be, if the environment is hospitable, it may attract new tenants.
Right.
Mayor Pro Tem, did you have anything? You want to do yours at the very end? Okay. I know that we have, so I definitely would love to hear from DRA if they're here, would like to give us some feedback or more suggestions, and then anybody else from the public, if you'd like to speak, just raise your hand maybe if you plan to talk. One.
And can I just add one question
Yes.
into the mix for anyone? Just opportunities to incentivize more food and beverage tenants with, the rents are high downtown. Mm-hmm. What are our opportunities here? What are we doing? If we're going to try to go beyond 8, how do we get there?
Yeah, I think that probably the best and most defensible type of incentive we could offer would be some public assistance for improvements within the public realm itself that would make the area more attractive for businesses, whether that was partnering with, let's say a business wanted to make more substantial changes to the furniture zone in front of their business. Would we be willing to create a capital fund that would allow us to help offset the cost of that if they were going to occupy that space for outdoor dining? That might be one way to think about it. Because there it's got a clear public benefit. You're making improvements within the public realm, so the use of public money, I think, would be appropriate. And of course, being able to expand your seating area is very economically beneficial for any restaurant or bar.
All right, thank you all so much. Bill King, Downtown Raleigh Alliance. I'll give a few remarks and just to sort of add some additional context and things to think about. So I really appreciate the questions and the ideas you all have had. I think you're on the right track there of obviously a good bit of this early phase is subtraction. And there are places, like you can see in this picture, where there's a lot of clutter there, sort of inhibiting a more flexible, interesting use of space. But I do think we want to make sure, along the lines of what you all are saying, is be strategic there. There are blocks where you can remove things or not, and it's not going to unlock anything, which I think, Councilor Harrison, you were along the lines of it's a bank lobby, it's a government building, it's an office lobby, and it's probably going to be that for a fair amount of time. There probably are a handful of storefronts where if you did unlock the space, you would see something different. So I think there's some potential cost savings there of let's focus on those storefronts where there is that real opportunity where you can unlock something different in the public realm. So I think being strategic on that. I think also just in that phase when you're talking about outdoor dining, at some point in this process, you're going to want to provide clarity on what that looks like for the businesses. So there are streets, you think of 4th Street on Winston-Salem, where the businesses get to essentially have almost like a short wall. I mean, they really get to sort of take the space and make it feel like the restaurant. That's a decision you all will have to make as to whether or not you want to allow that or not. That lets them sort of make it feel more like theirs, but you're still outside. So that's an example of something I think as you dig into this, you're going to want to have that clarity for the staff so then they can align their policy expectations to that. I think the big thing I want to emphasize that I think you guys are also touching on is addition. So if phase one is just subtraction, I do think we're going to have a challenge with the public's expectations and what we get out of that. Only so many spots will be immediately unlocked because there are 8 restaurants. And so addition has to be part of phase one too. And so, you know, what goes in those spaces where you've cleared out things? Is it a different type of seating? I've seen in the rendering swings, things like that. I think some clarity on what we're actually doing there so we don't end up with just removal, but then nothing got added and we're just sitting there with blank space. I think also thinking, you know, what will actually be catalytic here. I don't think you have to rip out every paver here in the first phase or anytime soon. I think there are things we can do in this corridor that are economical, but will be really impactful sort of visually and viscerally. And that's what we're going for, is people coming down here and seeing something and feeling something different than they felt before. City Plaza is a good example of that. The plaza's gray, it's hardscaped, has a mismatched pattern of bricks on it right now. I think the recent additions umbrellas have been great. And it's been, you know, it's not the most craziest idea ever, but it's been awesome. We see people using them every day. They love them. And so building off of that, I think there's some good investment to yield some return. I think the stage on the west side of the plaza would be really helpful. We could use that to program at lunchtime. We could use it after work. It's a
Bill,
shade
real
structure.
quick, you can turn the clock off. You don't have to rush your comments.
Okay.
We only have 2 people that want to talk, and we've got plenty of time.
Sure.
So go ahead.
All right, good. That's good. So I think a stage would be helpful for everyday activation, which the plaza lacks. It really dies off in activity. So I think that would be a way to do that. I think that's doable also for not an enormous amount of money and would unlock a lot of community opportunity as well. I think those mismatched bricks on the plaza, you don't need to replace the bricks. They're not that old, but they don't look great, right? So if there was something like a mural over those, you've solved those 2 problems, right? You didn't have to spend a lot of money, but you've done something colorful and impactful that people go, wow, this is really different. So I think that's another example of a strategic way of doing that. The 2 empty pedestals at the entrance to City Plaza used to have art. Now they don't have art. They're just empty pedestals. Another good example of you could do something there that would be impactful. I don't think would break the bank, but would be different and add the opportunity to convey something about the community and about our state. Those plaza and walkways between Fayetteville Street and Wilmington, I do think are really important. I agree, you know, with Ken's point on, you know, ultimately what would get those things active. That's not happening anytime soon. The back doors are the back doors of those buildings. They're historic buildings. The way 227 is oriented is the way it is. And then you all are going to sell One Exchange Plaza. And so I'd say focus on Market Plaza. If you're going to sell One Exchange Plaza, just sell it, right? Focus on Market Plaza, which is the other one. And I think doing something big there, painted mural on the surface, lighting overhead, and doing it well, going all the way, not just modest, but making the whole thing covered, would add some positive foot traffic there. It'd be passive, because we can't event that space enough, right? We already have Moore Square to do events in, City Plaza to do events in, other spaces. It's not a great event space, so it's got to be something really impactful that rebalances the traffic in it, which right now is not very productive. And then I'd say, in the larger scheme of things, there's some opportunities here around Moore Square as well. I know that's not been in the scope of this study, but I would encourage you all to look at that. From the economic development strategy, this is all a part of the core, right? And so, Fayetteville Street's connected to, Wilmington through those plazas, and then Wilmington to Moore Square. I know we've had some conversations on, can we make Moore Square a little bit more of a kids' destination, right? And then can we do some things, adding a play structure there and adding some sort of connection by bus from the square and museum to the state museums to the play plaza. I think at this point, the R line has kind of run its course, to be honest with you. And I know that's a conversation you all were having at your Dix Park work session that sort of straddles transit and economic development. But I would say for the economic development side, I think that would be a very worthy conversation to have as well as a part of all of this, because I think if you pair some visceral, visual impacts on Fayetteville Street and those plazas with some things in Moore Square, a year or two from now, you'll have a very different feel in the core of downtown, which is important. So I'm happy to take any questions on things we see, but I think being strategic on where to subtract, making sure we've paired this with addition in the first phase would be a great way to continue our momentum. Thank you all so much for taking the time to look at this issue.
Thanks. And just to level set, I spoke with Mr. Raleigh prior to our meeting, and I think the goal for today would be to get the information, send some direction to our staff. Next committee meeting, I think we'll narrow it down today to sort of like a handful of very prescriptive actions we may want to take, get some more information and details about those actions, funding sources and cost, and then I think we'll start moving things out piece by piece. And so I think we are sort of narrowing the list down now, and I'm taking notes on it. Councilmember Harrison?
Yeah, I just wanted to emphasize Bill's point about the R line. I was thinking we were going to get some data about that today. Maybe I'm wrong. Are we?
Well, I think what I would hope to do today is sort of maybe have like 5 things that we say, hey, these are the 5 top line things that we'd like at our next community meeting to do a presentation on each. And I do think the R line, possible ways to reroute it and make it more of an economic development connector for these, destinations could be one of them.
Yeah, that would be a conversation I'd like to have. I'd also like to see the usage and, how is it being used today to understand the ridership patterns.
Okay, we have someone else who's ready to share their thoughts. Yes, come on.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Pam Blondin. I'm going to read so I stay succinct.
Deco, right?
Yes, I own Deco Raleigh, and I'm here to build on what Bill mentioned, advocating not just for subtracting from Fayetteville Street, but adding through investing in art, light, and color. My perspective is rooted in several specific experiences. I've lived and worked on or near within a couple blocks of Fayetteville Street for more than 20 years. I walk it every single day. Since opening Deco 13 years ago, I've worked with hundreds of regional artists and makers. I sponsored Raleigh's first parklet. I worked with an artist and city staff to install Raleigh's first sidewalk mural. I funded several of Raleigh's first large-scale murals, and I served on the advisory committee for the study that made the recommendations that you're considering here. During the year of the study, there were several recurring themes that I think are important. I'm just going to mention a couple. Fayetteville Street is currently pretty dull and lifeless. I think the consultants called it a blandscape, which really rang in everyone's ears. We all believed that Fayetteville Street is and should be treated as not just Raleigh's, but North Carolina's main street, celebrating the very best of our state. We loved this vision, and I would love to see that ball start rolling down the hill. As such, it should be an attraction in and of itself, beyond special events, beyond the 1 or 2 things that happen on specific blocks. If we do this right and we invest in some impact, people will come to actually see Fayetteville Street, not necessarily just the things that are hosted on it. I'm here to beat the drum for some very visible, large-scale wins to complement the important infrastructure investments that you're talking about. Quick anecdote. When DECA moved to Salisbury Street, we moved around the corner, and I was worried we'd get a lot less foot traffic. So I paid a muralist to put a mural on the front. I paid a neon artist to create a magical sign, in my humble opinion. I cannot tell you how often people come specifically to take pictures of the building and of the sign, of the parklet, of the mural on the sidewalk. These things became part of the draw for visitors. We're actually on some walking tours of the city. I did it to get customers, and it ended up becoming an attraction. I think we can do that to Fayetteville Street, and I can tell you, because I paid for these things myself, it's affordable. I contend that this can and should happen on Fayetteville Street. Here are a few ideas. Instead of replacing, as Bill said, the mismatched bricks and pavers on City Plaza, or even worse, just letting them continue to be visible, why not hire a local artist to paint a huge show-stopping mural on the main plaza itself that celebrates our state? Why not fill back, as Bill said, those empty pedestals on the plaza? Those lit up heads were just incredible. Wouldn't it have been amazing if we could have kept those downtown, or had something that's a year and then we swap it out another year? But they're showstoppers that people will come to see. In addition to moving seating areas, why not create a trail of artwork all along the main street? Murals, mosaics, light, art installations, projections of art on the buildings, color and beauty overhead, below our feet, drawing visitors from one end of the city to the other. Instead of having bland plazas that connect Fayetteville to Wilmington Street during events but are dead the rest of the week, why not turn at least one of them into a gallery? You mentioned blank walls. Blank walls scream for color, paint, artwork, light. I love it. Why not make, instead of designing Fayetteville Street primarily for one-off large events that honestly don't benefit, they aren't a detriment, but they don't necessarily benefit downtown businesses or attractions, why not make Fayetteville Street and the neighboring streets the thing that people come to see, because it's awe-inspiring and like nothing else in the state? Think about cities you've visited and remembered. You probably recall the color and the art you found when walking around. I guarantee you don't recall what color the brick was that you were walking on. Those things happen because of leadership, passion, and a vision. And those things are what keep visitors coming back. Let's do the same with Fayetteville Street. Coupled with infrastructure improvements, can we set aside a few $100,000 to pay local artisans, engineers, students, nonprofits, arts organizations to help transform North Carolina's Main Street? I know I would help. I've already invested and I'll continue to invest, as would other independent business owners with a stake in downtown. I believe downtown Raleigh needs a breakthrough. We need a wow moment. I absolutely respect and admire the necessity. I love what you guys are doing. I think we could take a little bit of this money and have that wow moment soon while we start this flywheel rolling. Let's invest in visible, bold, and immediate change for Fayetteville Street, one that will make us all proud to host North Carolina's Main Street.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Am I the last one?
Are you ready now?
I'm ready now. So, in having conversations with business owners along the Fayetteville Street corridor over the last year or two, and Bill and I had this conversation as well this morning, we're making a significant investment in the Fayetteville Street corridor. But one of the things I think we need to also talk about, not at this meeting, but staff bring us something back, is maintenance of Wilmington Street and Fayetteville Street, the parking decks and other things, because one of the challenges is, from the business owner's perspective, they come in to open up the store in the morning, it smells like urine or other issues, trash, things along those lines. And so if we're gonna put a lot of money into art installations, lights, all the other things, we definitely need to make sure we're doing something about the maintenance of the two corridors, the parking decks and everything else, because you want, when people come to the downtown area, to have a good experience from the time they get out of their car to the time they go back to their car. So it's not just the stuff on the street, but it's all of the other maintenance things involved. So if we could put something on our agenda to have a conversation with DRA and figure out how to strengthen that part of the partnership as well, so that it's a friendly atmosphere and environment from the time people exit their cars to the time they go back, I think that will assist and make this much more successful.
All right, so, okay, Councilmember Harrison.
Yeah, just two more items. First, I'm sorry. You had a good thought, though. I like that. I highlight maintenance of Wilmington Street because I know we do extra cleaning on Glenwood, and I think we're probably needing to head that direction. So, yes. And I also just want to say thank you to Pam for your inspiring words because everything you said, I was like, yes, 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 yes.
Bill was inspiring too.
Yeah, Bill, you did
too,
well
Bill.
too, Bill.
But the opportunity to bring in public artists and have murals and, color and just, a reason to really be on this street is so important. So I guess when we do come back together, what I would ask is more for a catalog of options with individual costs so that we can pick and choose versus like phase one, everything is in this bucket of money, if that makes sense. Just as we're thinking about items, there might be something we like and something we can pull back as we're thinking about what we want to spend money on.
So I think, all right, so purposes of setting direction, let's start with this. So I think City Plaza is one of the topics. And what I'm hearing here is we would like for the next meeting for the City Plaza package, could you show us an option for, I definitely think we should do something with these empty pedestals. I liked the attention to the big, I remember the light up heads and people would just go down there to take pictures of that. I've told Bill before, I was like, why don't we just do the illuminate year round? Like, and maybe it'll become less of a novelty if we do that. But I think these sort of installations, and you're right, when I was in Columbus, they have this large mirrored object on their main street and it really pulls your attention. So something there, the stage or the bandstand, and then this idea of the murals. I mean, I thought, one thing we saw in the consultant report was like the big flag of North Carolina across City Plaza. The way it could look when you're leaving the convention center down that little alleyway, it's very bland right now. And so what I'm hearing is for City Plaza as one of the topics is the empty pedestals, an option for this bandstand stage, and then these murals and public art. Does everyone agree with that? And then, for Market and Exchange Plaza, Exchange Plaza is something that we own that we are planning to sell. So maybe we look at Market Plaza about how we could do this light, bold lighting, art, murals. Those can be sort of locally sourced, high impact things. If there is a way to program it with the kiosks, maybe we explore that, but that could be even a little longer term. But I know that was in the report too. I think about when you go into where the YMCA was, there was someone who had a little small business right there that started almost like a cart, and then they moved into a storefront. But maybe it's an opportunity to let people who have like the quote push carts. It won't be all hot dogs, I'm sure, but maybe we allow folks to set up, merchant stations there on Market Plaza certain hours, and you can get a cup of coffee or buy, I don't know, a sandwich or like pop-up type retail installations. Like that may be an option too. So that's two. The third thing is I think this overall cleanliness and maintenance. So I think that's a topic we would like to have at the next meeting is do we need to put additional resources in? What does our current maintenance look like? And then what are the opportunities to increase it? I have also heard concerns about real and perceived safety issues coming out of parking garages, the smell of urine and things that are not a very welcoming first impression or last impression. And it's not also just visitors, it's folks that are working at the businesses on Fayetteville Street. Their employees also are parking in these decks and walking to and from, and what is their experience like? So I think that's 3. 4 would be the R line. I think we do want to pull that discussion in. So if we could just get some data on how I don't even know what the current route is, to be honest. I don't, since it came back after COVID. What is the route? What is the utilization? And then how can we repurpose it to be more of a destination connector? The conversation we had was how can we get from the museums to Moore Square, Fayetteville Street, Dix Park? Can it circulate in a way that connects attractions downtown together? I think the initial intent of the R line was to get folks from the convention center to hotels that weren't near the convention center, and our city has evolved since then. And then I would say the fifth thing is we got to figure this piece out. My preference on this streetscape is I would like to pick our 2 blocks that are the highest impact with the highest concentration of existing storefronts and storefronts that could potentially attract new tenants. And maybe we go a little further than just the phase 1. Maybe on those 2 blocks, we do go ahead and do the full idea and see what it looks like. The changing the wells and pulling out maybe on those 2 blocks, we do the full future condition, and then that'll also give us a good, I think, test of how it's working or not working. What do you all think about that?
No, I mean, those are all an excellent summation of many items. I just wanted to add maybe 2 different things to build on what Pam was talking about with the sign. That is a very beautiful sign that you have created, really placemaking right there by your shop. And when you look at the old photos of Fayetteville Street, you saw all sorts of really interesting signs back in the 50s. Those have been stripped away. I mean, I like this idea of exploring. And we also, I think we have some historical collection of some old signs from around the city. And you just wonder, as you try to celebrate, right, the state and the history and all this, is there a way to add light and signage? So I love that thought. And then this whole parking lot, and I know Paul Callum sitting over here, we had, and Bill had, already come up, DRA had suggested this. How do you, if you have one destination that's really linked with a parking lot, like Marbles is linked to that part of that Wilmington Street, and then I connected Pastor Bowie, who's the new minister at First Baptist Wilmington, who wants to do parking lot ministry because they don't have dedicated parking. So he wants to have praise music and people in T-shirts so that they're having that experience of church and praise from the moment they park their car in the deck. And I said, wouldn't this be great if you had park and play and park and pray on the other side? But I also just think for all of these decks, not just sort of cleaning it up, but is there a natural sort of partner or designated businesses connected to that lot where you have a little more ownership and connection and branding that helps us make it, a safer, more active space? And I know our transportation team is just totally creative and up for that. But so I agree with the comments on, maintenance and clean, but maybe there's another level of fun, creative activation as well.
So what I'm thinking is maybe I'm trying to put it into like categories for staff. Maybe that final category is more of like a regulatory category. And so the signage, obviously, I know that, I have heard stories, I don't want to call anybody out, but difficulties in getting a new sign on a new restaurant downtown, or replicating signs on existing retail storefronts, and one was non-conforming, now the rest have to be a certain size. So I agree, when you look at these old Raleigh photos of Fayetteville Street, it just looked like a more lively and inviting place because it had a lot more character. And some of that was the signage, and we were less restrictive on what things could look like and what you could do. And so, I think Bill brought up a good point too about we do need to give direction to the business owners once we make these changes on what can they do in their outdoor dining space. When I was in Columbus, I'm sorry to keep hammering that. That was the best example of a main street. Yeah, I was there.
That's where I'm from. So
I can't remember what their main street is called, but I can definitely tell you what it looks like. And yes, High Street. But those restaurants do have little perimeter walls around their outdoor dining, and it feels like it's the restaurant coming out and less, hey, we stuck tables on the sidewalk. And so I would say this, can we look at how we can change our code to provide more flexibility on the signage, on extending, I guess, the sidewalk space to feel like it's more part of the built environment? And then I agree on the cleanliness and how can we partner on these decks. I love this idea of, we know that people at Marbles are parking at a certain deck and some of these churches are using certain decks, and how can that help? How can we lean on the community to provide more of that safety and I guess, user experience? Do you have what you think you need for us?
Yes. So just a couple of notes. I appreciate the summation. I will say some of these, in terms of turnaround time, will probably take a little longer. I think we'll do as much to bring back. I think we'll certainly make the focus of what we return with next month, if we're going to meet next month, that it'll be those, I think the top three things that you listed, the city plaza enhancements, kind of review of that, costing of that, Market Plaza, the Fayetteville Street treatment. We certainly have information related to some of these questions I heard come up related to maintenance and schedules and R-line. I think that's data that's readily available. We'll try to have that as well. I think the policy and regulatory pieces might take a little longer to flesh out, but that's not guaranteed, but we'll come back with as much of this as we can reasonably sort of process and digest in the next few weeks. How about that?
I mean, one thing we talked about was we were looking at like a funnel. So we're starting pretty wide. I think we've narrowed down sort of these topics now. And so I think each additional committee meeting we have, if you could bring us packages for these topics, maybe it's not all at once, but maybe next committee meeting we get the City Plaza stuff and this stuff, whatever staff can bring to us. But I just want to start moving things out of committee fully tied up so that when it gets to the council table, it's easy for the council to understand what we've recommended. And ideally, there would be a price tag attached and an identified funding source, which is what we did in transportation and transit with some of these really high-risk intersections. We referred them out with a plan and a funding source and a recommendation that once council approved, y'all could just start. And I think that there's a desire from our council to start doing the thing, as Councilmember Patton said. So.
Sure. Well, if the committee is amenable to us bundling things, I think there's kind of a logical way to divide up this list in terms of the packages that we bring back. In my mind, the first package of things is probably those interventions along the physical interventions, the Market Plazas, the City Plaza, the Fayetteville Street. Maybe we take that as one package. A separate package is the regulatory policy-related pieces, and then potentially a third, some of these things that speak to current efforts that might need to be enhanced, like cleanliness or just having a conversation. Because I don't want to overwhelm the committee with a lot of pieces and separate conversations in a lot of ways, but they interact, but just want to make sure that it's a digestible amount of information that we're sharing at any one time for you.
Okay. Anything else from the committee? No? All right. This was very, very helpful. Thank you, everyone, for being here, and we're excited to get to work.